Hey guys, it's Neyyah here from Defy Reality Entertainment, and today I will be doing part 2 of what I'm calling Returning to the Watchtower, which is basically a sort of 2-part devlog where I'll be returning to an area of the game which I showcased in 2020 to basically show animation, sound, and certain interactions within the game. Not so much puzzle elements, but kind of borderline kind of puzzle elements. And now how that has come across, obviously with the 2022 current build, and how things have improved, and also showing the environment completely realized. So you have the entire area completely rendered, all the distant environment elements and stuff like that, and then comparing that to how it looked in 2020. So from a developer's standpoint, it's been great returning to an area that I remember fondly, modeling back in 2020 and putting together, doing a video on that, and that was just before Microprose, my publisher, got interested in the game, and before I signed with them. And so it's a very particular time of Neyyah's development, and so for me, going back to that area now and coming up with the final interior renders, getting those animations in, and eventually putting the final sounds in as well, and obviously music. It's just been really nice and refreshing, because it's almost like how the player feels going into an environment for the first time. So yeah, enjoy this comparison between the 2 test builds, and I'll see you on the other side of that portal. I'm just going to go through a couple of the things in Visionaire, the kind of framework of how all these images are put together, stuff that I've already covered within Visionaire already in certain videos, but just a bit of a behind the scenes view on this particular location. So basically this area, this particular scene that we're going to be looking at, is separated into 2 sections. So you have the bottom and top sections, and they're all just linked together. And these particular scenes here, for example, were one of the really nice scenes that I enjoyed seeing come to life within the renders. They're quite big scenes. There's a lot of models within this particular area of Neyyah. It was a very complex undertaking, and really kind of came about because of the fact that, wow, suddenly I've got these really powerful machines. I can start doing some really detailed models, and I think I took that maybe a bit too far in hindsight, but I managed to find out ways where I can, obviously render the scenes as the best way I can. It's one of the scenes of Neyyah that's taking the longest to generate renders for, whether that be the scenes or the animations. But finally, I managed to put these scenes together, so it's been really nice putting them into the engine and seeing them come to life. Again, for this particular scene here, we have a sort of less of a 90-degree turn. We have a more of an 180-degree turn. So it actually goes to between 2 scenes, A and C. The A here is actually part of an OpenGL animation that hasn't been fully rendered yet, so it only stands as an OpenGL sequence of frames. That is the basic, easiest way for me to get the animations into the engine and working, and being actually playing within the engine when they should be, and also seeing speeds and seeing what things need to be tweaked here and there. But a lot of the times the renders just go straight in and they look really good, and obviously when they're fully rendered, it's amazing. They come to life with the lighting and everything. It's wonderful. So you'll see a couple of those within this build that I'm going to show you. But we're going to go to the previous 2020 build first, and I'm going to play a bit of that, and we're going to see how that turned out and the things I feel could have been improved from that build as well. Okay, so I'm not too sure how loud this is for you guys. Actually, there's no sound on this bit at all. So this is the little kind of test screen that I did before you start playing. And so straight away, there are so many things that have changed along the way. First off, this is when I was using Photoshop for the edits. I was using GIMP before, so I'd say maybe end of 2019, possibly beginning of 2020, and throughout the year until maybe, I don't know, September maybe 2020. Possibly actually before that, maybe July, I was using GIMP, and then I started using Photoshop. And one of the main reasons is because I was realizing that if I wanted to add really cool effects to actual rendered images, that was going to be really difficult to do for animations, because depending on how many frames there were, I was going to have to manually add all these like action list sort of effects into the scenes. Well, I found out in Photoshop there was a way of being able to create like a batch where you could just get all your frames, put them through the effects, and it just pumps them all out with all the effects added. That was one of the main reasons why I changed to Photoshop. And I was using Photoshop at the time when I rendered these particular images out in 2020, but the lighting and the certain effects that I've added since have brought a lot more life to the scenes than I even had here. Another thing that I've changed a lot is the actual water effects. They're not going to be present within the build that I'm going to show you of how it looks in 2022, but because I haven't added any water effects for this particular location yet in the final build. But looking at these effects here from 2020, you know, I can already see there's been a vast improvement. Even though the water was animated, it always maybe had this more kind of jellified kind of look to it. Now, in the background here, there's also buildings that aren't even present within the scene anymore. They exist somewhere else within the game. There was a lot of movement of various arrangements of models that have been taken out and replaced with other things. So this is actually really cool. This is a really cool example of how things have evolved within the Neyyah world. And there's reasons for that. There are technical reasons, which then evolved and became story-based reasons. So a lot of the things I do within Neyyah, if there's a fault with anything or something that I feel like maybe it's even a bit of feedback, and I'm like, oh wow, you know, didn't really think about that at the time. What's the best way to rectify this? And so this is more of a good example of how an environment has changed, because the rendering limitations, even with two really powerful PCs, I was really choking the Blender universe with my models. So a lot of things had to be kind of shifted around. And this actual structure here on the right no longer exists at all. And you can see it was just obviously in the framework almost. It was just being developed at the time. The tower over here has been completely developed now. This building in the distance over here no longer exists in this scene. So it's really cool just seeing these scenes from a developer's standpoint, thinking, wow, everything's changed so much since then. And you can turn around. I'd also have changed the cursors since I put this build together as well. I'm going to go up. Cool. And it's really fun adding the sounds to these animations as well, like not just environmental static kind of sounds of ambience, but the animations that play when you're moving for journey mode, for example, which wasn't the case at this point. So I hadn't actually implemented those options into the game yet, so journey mode wasn't a thing. It later became a thing where I thought, well, it would be great to have these extra F&B sequences where you're moving up ladders, going downstairs, and that can be something that the player can turn off or turn on, because it would kind of get annoying, even with like the ability to skip those animations, which I'm sure you can do, I think, in this build as well. Yes, you can. So they just kind of fade away, which is quite a nice effect, because it feels like it did happen, but you're kind of moving, morphing almost into the position that you're going to be at the end of that. So yeah, that's something that I've obviously integrated more into the game. It's now become an actual option mechanic within the game called journey mode. But the frames of the animation are quite low at this point as well. They were, you know, I was working with a certain amount of frames. I didn't want to spend too much time rendering these little animations. The animations for Neyyah now are much more, there's a vast amount of animations. It's one of the things that is the most time-consuming part of developing Neyyah, is going to be rendering the animations for this game. But hey, it brings the life to the game. It brings a whole new dimension to the game as well. Moving away from more of that static feel and bringing more life to the actual adventure and the world as well. And the frame rate is a lot higher now. I can't remember what the frame rate was for these animations. It could have been anywhere between 12 and maybe 15 frames per second. But then they were sped up within Visionaire, so you can actually adjust the speed of animations within Visionaire as well, which is really cool. So yeah, that's a really cool example of just like how things have evolved since then, you know. Now what I did add to this particular scene was the light coming in and changing. So I'm actually kind of repeating myself here from the 2020 commentary, so I'm not going to delve into it too much, but definitely watch that video because it explores how I put these sort of scenes together and what I was kind of experimenting with. But I will say that for these particular scenes here, you can actually see on the wall the light there just becomes brighter now and again, just kind of increases in brightness. And that was kind of a cool idea that I had of like the sunlight coming in and like the clouds going over, and so it kind of dims a bit then brightens up again, so it felt like the clouds were actually passing almost, although they don't really look like they're moving within the scenes. It kind of added this kind of extra feel of kind of immersion, of like realism almost, with the sun rays coming down as well. I actually added like a really cool little bird thing here that goes past, so you had these birds fly past. So yeah, we've got another couple of animations. These are fully rendered as well, so even though the animations for the new build haven't been fully rendered yet, you can see these ones and kind of compare and kind of like think, that's what, you know, this is what it's going to look like almost. So yeah, we can look around. We've got some cool sounds going off as well. The sounds get louder as you approach them and move away. So all this was rendered out in 2020. You can look outside. Got a little bird flying off. Wasn't even, the wings weren't even animated for that. It was just a really quick kind of test model that just like flies across. But it would be great for a particular scene like this to get some really nice distant bird animations going on as well. I think that'd be really cool. The thing about adding things like birds into an environment like Neyyah, when it's so open space, is that if the birds are, say, like they're flying around this like construction here and they're flying around the top, well, every scene that you're at is going to have those birds flying around to make it realistic. Because if you go outside now and go back down and the birds aren't there, it's like, well, and then you go to another scene, it's like, and they are there. So there's an extra layer of work and time that has to go into those kind of things. So I really have to be careful and really kind of think carefully about where these animal creature animations are going to be, and insects as well. The characters themselves, the actual people within Neyyah, that's a very different kind of set kind of thing, and that's already been planned and currently in development as well. A lot of prep work is going to be going on this month and into December, with filming commencing in January for the characters of Neyyah. So definitely stay tuned for the information and the kind of sneaky peeks into the characters of Neyyah, which is going to be a really cool dimension to this world to actually finally share and discuss with you guys as well, especially in devlogs as well. So we can back up there, we can go over here, we can move things up. Again, even these small little animations were rendered at a very sort of low frame rate. And one thing I did touch upon in that other video that I did in 2020 is that with the sounds, it's not just what you can see in front of you, it's the sounds that are happening outside of what's in front of you, what you can't see. And it's the mechanics of what's inside this machine, what's going on inside the machine. That's the fun of sound design, and I can't wait to really get deep into that for the various elements of Neyyah. Again, not just being inside here with this nice whistling wind sound and the motors going off, but just the actual sounds of things being pushed and buttons being pushed. I think it's great how you get this sudden change of being outside to going inside, of the sounds morphing into one another. That's a really nice effect. Fantastic. I'm sure that sound there was a recording I did of a washing machine. So some of the sounds I used for Neyyah are actually recorded sounds that I've done myself, but some of them are from freesound.com, freesound.org. I'll have to double check on that. But yeah, it's a lot easier using sounds that are already there, because then I can just kind of work with them within Sonar Cakewalk and adjust them as need be, whether that's pitch or EQ or all various different effects that I can add to make it the sound I want, and it speeds things up a bit as well in terms of development. So yeah, I can just exit here and I can go down here and climb down the ladder. And it was really fun. It was really fun putting this little build together, and I knew at the time that it probably won't come into the actual final game as such, but it was a great example of being able to show well, the public what was happening in Neyyah, the kind of game it is, and so for me that was important in itself, you know. And okay, we're back in 2022 now, the current state of this watchtower area. This actual entire place is called the Harbour Zone, and I don't want to talk any more about it. I don't want to give anything away as such, but it's called the Harbour Zone. And as you can see, it's come along a lot since 2020. There isn't any animated water, but it's going to look a treat when the animated water is actually added. And one of the cool things I got really into when I was designing this area was the kind of water surf, kind of frothy white areas that you can see kind of building around the actual objects that are within the water. Might have kind of maybe a bit kind of like over the top with that in this particular area of the game, but I still think it really kind of adds to the scene anyway, and with a bit of Photoshop work as well, they can be kind of smoothed out in certain places. So, but yeah, it came along really nicely. So at that point there, I actually haven't created the journey mode animation yet. So at the moment, we're just kind of like moving up the ladder, which is what would happen if you have journey mode disabled anyway. I haven't got a look down either. So when you just sort of click forward, you just move down. But that will be added as well as one of the part of the retouch sessions that I'm currently doing for this entire scene of Neyyah. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful scene. It came out so nicely and went through so much development, as you can see. Like how much the environment changed and what was taken away, what was added. And the reason being is, like I said, technical reasons, render times, crashing, loading the files, but also environmentally just kind of making things look a bit less messy and kind of tidying things up a bit, and kind of working in the sense of like, okay, so why would this part of the terrain, for example, on the left be here, and why would there be more of an open space on this side? And obviously maybe the portals kind of like give clues to that, but I'm not going to say anything else. But everything's changed and new things were added and things were developed upon, and as you can see here, there was a lot of detail just added into the side of the wall here, and the actual tunnel, for example. You know, these areas were separate scenes that were developed in Blender and then brought into this entire scene that we've got here, the entire set. And for animations, some of these certain parts of these scenes have actually sort of taken out, and then only the part that's being animated is rendered out. That means, you know, I'm able to get into the scene a lot quicker, and it saves render times as well. But some of the actual retouch elements of like re-rendering actual scenes for the game like this, I'm just actually using the entire set, just because it's easier to then import cameras into the set. I used to do a thing where I'd literally set up a camera, save that as a file, set up another camera, save that as a file, and it was just a headache trying to open these huge files. Where now it's kind of like I've got one scene and it can have multiple cameras within that scene that I can just select, render. It takes sometimes a bit of time to get out of that render after the computer's kind of loading and saving, and then getting back into the next camera to select and start rendering that particular scene. So I haven't got any light effects happening in this particular area. They're just static at the moment. Haven't got any bird flying over. Again, the sound is just the same sound throughout at the moment, but it's going to be great to build upon the sounds that I had in the old test build and really kind of bring that element of kind of feeling like you're going from outside into inside, and that have that really nice shift of sounds taking place as well. So the animations now are a lot smoother, and this is just OpenGL. I think we're at about 124 frames per second, and they're also adjusted slightly within Visionaire as well. But here we are inside the watchtower, and you can see the views from outside are obviously drastically different to the previous build. None of the water is animated, but the lighting effects that I've created in Visionaire since have obviously improved the actual kind of quality and contrast and the brightness of certain elements of the scene. Also, thanks to Zachary McIntyre, who has helped me with the shader for the ocean back in the day when I was developing Neyyah in the early days in 2018, and a few other Blender things as well. You can actually see here, particularly when you're a bit lower down, you can see there's an actual kind of slight mist on the horizon that fades away, makes the clouds feel like they're actually fading away into the distance. And that wasn't added at the point when I was developing in 2020. That was something that we both kind of worked together, and he helped me a lot with achieving that effect in 2022 and 2021 last year. But yeah, just looking at these scenes, are quite static at the moment, but having the water animated, I usually, instead of what happened in Riven, what they tended to do is they animated a portion of the ocean or more close-up kind of water. They didn't seem to animate high view oceanscapes, but that's something I'm doing in Neyyah, is animating the entire ocean. And within Squirrel's water effects, which I've got some devlogs touching upon my work in those in that program as well, you can actually create some really nice perspective water effects where the ripples at the foreground are a lot bigger, and then as they get far off into the distance, they really get really small. So you get this really nice perspective effect going on. Yeah, one of my favorite scenes. One of the favorite renders from recent days that I've batched out and put into the engine. This actual scene here was rendered at, I think, about 3,000 samples within Blender as well. So it needed, certain scenes need that extra samplage within Blender. Samples are basically what, if you have like say 10 samples, you're going to have a very grainy image. The more samples you have, the more detail you can actually get out from your image when you're rendering it. They take longer to render, the more samples you have, and particularly with a scene like this, with the amount of models and the amount of complexity that's going on in this scene. There's about, I think there's about 90,000 polys going on in this scene. And yeah, I used about 3,000 samples as well, so it rendered out nicely. But yeah, just these long distance shots of particularly the harbour zone, they're going to be rendered just a bit higher, just to get that clarity within the actual scene and the detail, just the off detail of the tower, for example, and just trying to capture as much of those little elements of the distant pathway, little steps here, and all sorts of different things going on. And it's just wonderful from a developer's standpoint, looking at this and being like, wow, I sometimes think to myself, how the hell did I actually put this together? It's crazy. Along with all the other work that's going on in Neyyah, it's just insane. I think I'll have to pinch myself when this game is finished and be like, wow. And I think I didn't add this for the other build, but I actually have like a turn, so you can actually turn between the views from outside this little window here. You can actually look there and look over here, and you can look down as well, and then look back up. And I might actually bring this camera this camera angle a bit further back, just so that you can actually see this pipe a bit more. I mean, you can tell that it's going down, and then you should be able to see that it connects over here, but I might actually render it so that you can actually see the whole pipe in its entirety and where it's leading. So one of the big things about Neyyah is observation. You have to observe everything within the game, in the world that you're in. And that is going to help you so much in terms of working out how things are working and why they're working the way they do. And that is going to enable you to progress within the game. And that's what Riven did so well. One thing I added this morning as well is that if you go over here, you zoom down, and you can see the hatch that you came up through. You can close it. Well, you know, I'm seeing it from this perspective, which, by the way, is where is it? 2C. So this is 2C. So when I zoom in here and I zoom back out, I'm telling the computer to go back to 2C. I go back over here. I'm now looking at this perspective. I look down and it's going to the hatch. I zoom out and it's going back to the image I was at instead of going to the 2C. So I had it set to 2C. That's the only one that. But now you can go to any angle, any point of the. I can go over here, for example. I can look down, and I can open the hatch. I can actually. I don't need to close the hatch by clicking here. I can actually zoom out. It will close the hatch for me and go back to the image I was at. And also, what I've added now that I didn't have in 2020 was these cursors, the left and right forward cursors. So these kind of demonstrate where I can go exactly. Instead of just having that like one hand cursor that you had in Riven, the cursors in Neyyah are going to be a lot more specific of what you can do, which is going to enable the player to feel, I think, less frustrated on what they can click on. I do have an option within Neyyah called click hints, which I might actually replace with something else because I don't think I'm going to need it. I don't think the player's going to need it. I think the cursors are going to do enough of the work for them in terms of what they can click on within the scene, and so that will probably be replaced with something else. And again, if you've got any suggestions as well, like what you would like to have in the options within Neyyah, definitely comment. Let me know. Like there might be things that are already within the game, or things that I haven't even thought about, or maybe have ideas for anyway. But definitely let me know. So again, you can sort of click here, you can go over here. I can do like a left turn, so I can sort of, now I'm kind of what I'm doing here on this left turn is I'm actually walking around. I'm sort of moving around the different points. And there's kind of 4 points to this this circular room. So you've got, you know, kind of north, east, south and west kind of points. That's the best way to kind of, you know, do it. And then I can move forward. I can, instead of turning left, I can go forward here. So instead of going left and then right to get here, I could just go over here and I go straight to where I need to be. So those little shortcuts, those little movements are going to enable the player to move around a lot faster. And obviously on top of that, I can take off the transitions completely. So now I'm just snapping to each scene, and I don't have to worry about any turns as well. I can just go straight to the scenes that I need to be at, which is also another thing that will speed up gameplay in general, you know. So yeah, these animations now move a lot faster as well, a lot smoother. They haven't been rendered out. As you can see, the lever hasn't been rendered out. It's a cropped render as well, just to save time. It's just been placed into the game. Little button there. I'm actually powering different things right now, and I can actually go over here. I'm actually going to change this to one. I'm going to go to relaxed. So this is like one of the slowest movements in the game, where it really does fade into each image, which kind of gives a nice, you know, if you want to really take your time as well. Just take your time exploring and looking at things. See, what I might do is actually go over here, turn this on, so you can see the light turns on there, turns off, turns on. And the actual implementation of these mechanics and making sure that the states are perfect, it hasn't been too much of an issue. I think I had a lot more of a kind of like complicated way of doing things last time when I was building this in Vision Air. But because I've been working in Vision Air now a lot longer and for longer periods of time, I've created such a particular system for Neyyah and how things are integrated within the actual engine, which is actually more specified for third-person games rather than a Myst style first-person point-and-click game. It's been, it's been a joy just being able to come up with systems that work really quickly, and you can get things going really fast. And the only thing again is the render time. So, for example, now I've turned this on. From every angle that lever is seen, I have to have that little light on. It has to be a new render. It has to be a rendered image of that little light on, and it has to work. It has to be triggered. So now I've turned it off. That means it's now going to be off. If I go over here, for example, this actually won't work because this button is, I've just turned off the power. So if I go back over here, this is on now. So if I go over here and pull that lever up, that's switched on. That means that lever now has to be up in all the different positions that you can see it. So I have to make sure that all those renders are accounted for because of the pre-rendered nature of Neyyah, which can be a bit of a headache, but to be honest, it's actually a really satisfying process. I can also look up as well. One thing I might add, I haven't actually done that yet, is you can actually look up from any angle over here in these sort of like far corner of a circle areas, the far ends of the far areas, the far points. You can actually look up and you can see what's up at the top of the roof as well. But there's only one area in this room where you can actually look up completely above you, and that's here. So you can actually look up above you there. But I might do it so that you can actually get an angle and look up there, and get an angle and look up there. So you I'm taking into account all the different perspectives. Sometimes it's good to keep things minimalistic and simple when you're creating a game like this in this style, but it's also nice to have those areas where you can look up and down at different areas and buildings, and just to kind of really kind of take in the environment. And I think it's important to kind of take that into account when the player is playing a game like Neyyah. And because of its pre-rendered screen-to-screen nature, I have to kind of think, okay, so how many nodes do I need in this scene? Can I take some out, or maybe I need to add some in? Because like for example, I could just have this view outside, but I decided, hey, I might actually have a view of looking down as well. Is there a reason maybe for having that look down option as well? So there's all those things to think about. But yeah, there aren't as many sounds as the other build, but wow, I just feel like it's a lot tighter now, and it's come along really well. And I really can't wait to render out these animations and have the sounds going on as well. It's gonna look really nice. The music as well, particularly for a scene like that, being inside a sort of like an area or like an interior, that's where the sound and the music is going to really bring those scenes to life. And when you go back outside here, you might not have any music at all, but I do have an option in the game called Music Lover, which basically will play music pretty much throughout the entire game. It'll be like almost like a hidden soundtrack that will play, if you have that selected, will play in areas that you might not hear music at all. And there's reasons why I've decided not to have music as a default option, because I'd rather have the ambience immerse you, and the music is more effective, I think, in certain areas. You might have stings of music, but it's nice to have just the sounds, and I think Riven did such a good job of that. But the Music Lover is an option where if you do want music a lot more throughout the game, then it's there. You can actually have the music playing even if you're outside. So that's a really cool option that I added. So yeah, guys, I mean, this is a real cool comparison again of how a game world develops, how it evolves, and also how a build evolves as well. and I can't wait to add the water animations to this again, and the sounds, and it's come along so much since 2020. So I thought, yeah, I'll show you the two builds together and how different they look. So you can now kind of rewind in this video, you can sort of compare the two looks, and yeah, let me know what you think. Definitely comment, like, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for more devlogs that are coming out from the world of Neyyah's development, the realms of Neyyah Dev. And yeah, I can't wait to share more of the work that I'm doing with Neyyah. There's so much going on at the moment. Sound design and music are going to be so cool to like get into, and the filming as well. That's going to happen in January. There's going to be sort of behind the scenes stuff going on over there as well, which I'm really excited to share with you as well. So yeah, stay tuned, and thanks for stopping by, and I'm hoping you enjoyed this step into the Neyyah universe. Bye guys.